Great, thank you so much. We will continue. Last but not least, I invite Jacinto, National Director of Digital Art Program, to give a conference focused on metapoiesis versus software, gaming strategies to unleash creativity. Ready, Jacinto?
Yes, ready. You asked me something of last minute. I put it on last.
Okay, that's perfect. Yes, and there is the bio as well of Jacinto. It's quite extensive, so I will not read it, but he's a great guy. You can trust him. Okay.
No, not really.
Then which one you put it? Oh, I may need to reload, right?
You might, but it's the last link I sent you today.
¿Y si no lo pusiste aquí?
No, it's not that.
No, ya sé. Es que ahorita está cargando todavía los slides. Es que son un buen. Son como...
¿Quieres que haga un quick link o un bit.ly, alguna cosa más fácil?
No. Ahorita va a venir.
Pero no es la presentación que te había mandado, es un update de hoy. Te mandé la liga.
¿Pero si viene aquí? No, pero ¿dónde lo pusiste?
No está para nada ahí.
Ah, ok.
¿Quieres
¿Quieres empezar un poquito y yo lo pego?
Sí. Perdón. Sí,
Vale.
Yeah, we'll have some issues. But to begin with, I guess, actually I'll bring my computer over here anyway.
No, it will work. It will work, yeah?
This looks a bit improvised.
Jacinto?
Yeah.
Let me just get the link. That's it.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for all the great presentations, for all the sharing of knowledge. I'm bedazzled with all of the new information, and I think my mind is about to explode with so many new things happening there. I'm not sure how much of it can I grasp to stay there, but all of Confluence Creative has been wonderful. Every part of it that I have experimented were great so far. So I would like to thank Dorian for all his work, Fred as well, everyone. Actually, I won't name every single one of you, but all of you, thank you for all the work put in this. And well, I'll talk about several interrelated themes, I guess. We'll begin with understanding a bit of the value of creativity in the context of the Industrial Revolution. Then we'll examine a bit about crypto-positivism and the tyranny of software. And then we'll explore the relationship between creativity, freedom, and play as a possible response to that. And well, basically, as well, désolé, je ne parle pas français. La présentation est en anglais, est inclus espagnol. That's as far as I can do. And we'll talk about, first of all, we'll talk about ludic strategies. So ludic strategies or game strategies or play strategies are often used for a lot of things. Gamification is the most famous one, but I would actually say it's not my favorite one. But ludic strategies as a whole, including gamification, means using things we know from games for other stuff, any kind of stuff. I'm a vouch for applied games rather than gamification, but that's not the conversation today. For example, and I wanted to show you a quick video of this to you, but as an example, a few years ago in 2016, we did this on this huge explosion of Pokemon Go. We did the first Mexico City Pokemon Day, and we had 70,000 people playing Pokemon or Pokemon-related games Pokemon Go or Pokemon-related games on the Chapultepec Forest in Mexico City. Chapultepec Forest is the largest green area in Mexico City, which is actually the largest city by area in the world. So it's like the breathing organ of the city somehow, you know, it's like the lungs of the city somehow. Chapultepec Forest is super important. You would maybe think of it as the Mexico City Central Park of some sorts, to cite something more popular worldwide, but it's larger, much larger than Central Park, and much more complex. There's a lot of things going on inside of it. Specifically, a lot of museums. It's a very deeply rooted cultural space. It actually has pre-Hispanic colonization roots. The Aztecs used Chapultepec Forest as a leisure place for the emperor, for the Aztec emperor. So for the Tlatoani, as the Aztecs called the emperor. So using ludic strategies to recover the space, because from afar you could say, yeah, Pokemon Go, whatever. But if you look deeply, we were using Pokemon Go to build a different kind of citizenship and familiarize citizens with new spaces around Bosque Chapultepec. We built deliberately routes for them, and we helped, or which at least we tried to help build a deeper interconnection between all those 17,000 participants and families together to exchange, to know each other. I'm most certain to a degree, even if it is a low degree, we had success with that. But I won't go more about ludic strategies. It's just a quick summary and an example of what I've done with that. And there's another ludic strategy we actually use to make games. It's kind of some sort of a game about making games. It's called game jams. So those of you who have ever been in a game jam, you understand that it is somehow a game with a set of, a very loose set of rules, but some rules. And you have one objective, making a game for 8 hours usually. And you have to develop, so you have to change your mindset for a very, very quick project and finish it as soon as possible. So you usually you would say like, well, that kind of challenge will move forward to innovation, to be more creative. And for a while it was like that. I mean, the original spirit of game jams, and I'm going to quote Global Game Jams values here, were exploration, collaboration, and innovation, right? Experimentation, collaboration, and innovation. And you say like, that sounds all right. A game jam, similarly, that what happens with a musical jam session. In a game jam, people is like exploring from a singular point, you know, a singular point in space, and they go in any direction. You are not defining what kind of product they will reach at the end, you're just defining where they begin. And that's our thinking right there, that we're thinking like artists. And you say, yeah, they will explore in every direction, right? But there's one thing here, and I mean, I kind of know a bit about game jams because I organized a lot of them. I think, I don't even have the count, but it's maybe over 40, maybe even 50 game jams that I have organized in my life. I did a lot of game jams for a little while, even 10 per year. And you usually, game jams are becoming a bit, game jams are becoming a bit deformed. What happened? People started adding their values to the game jam, right? I did that myself. Like, let's do a game jam for games that doesn't use sight, for example, and we did that, you know, like games for blind people. Yes, sounds really cool. But what's happening is that when we start adding, when we start adding this kind of things to game jams, we start shifting the paradigm, no, not really the paradigm, because the paradigm is the axiom, the axis of divergent thinking, and we're switching to convergent thinking. We are asking them to do design, more design and less art, right? There's less exploring there. And as we keep going, and this is another video. This is from the largest ever, oh no, this is not it. This was my computer, so. This is the largest game jam ever done in Spanish, ever. We have around 500 people working on this under the same group. But what happened there and was kind of scary when I went back and analyzed it and played each of the games made in that game jam. There were a lot of them. But you can look at the pictures, it's huge. And what happened is that games were becoming more and more similar year by year. So I say like, okay, I've been organizing a global game jam venue each year. But instead of being a space for innovation, for exploration, for artistic values, games are becoming more and more like each other. And maybe if you organize game jams, you know this phenomenon. They focus on finishing on the 48 hours so much that they kind of forget about exploration and maybe not getting anywhere. They focus on the challenge and they try they accept the game, they accept the challenge, but they forget it's a bit about breaking rules. The game is a bit about breaking rules. So they don't break the rules, they go by the rules, and they have the exact same outcome. And well, that led me to ask myself, that's a bit of a push. And now I come to my current position very quickly. I'll go back to the game jams. But what I'm working like now is I'm national director for the digital art bachelor, and we have to envision the future of the discipline 10 years ahead. You know, like at least a decade in the future. And we know it's impossible. It's actually impossible to do that. But if the future looks like this, I mean, like artists or game makers, or I'm not talking about artists, designers, software engineers. If everyone is going to be making the same thing, it's a bit scary because there's not much value to each of those disciplines. I mean, exactly with artificial intelligence and other processes, ongoing processes, that's easily replaced. If you're going to make the same thing again and again, there's no value added there. So back to it. What is happening at game jams? You know, and I think what's happening at game jams has some underlying relation of what happens sometimes at academic institutions with the same thing, with the same phenomenon. Here. This is for school cultures. School cultures need to support learning, work successes defined in many ways over different settings. It carries with it shades of what can be referred to as crypto-capitalism. And this is, we focus so much on the challenge and the problems, but we objectify and generalize those problems. And a lot of those problems become decontextualized, and there's a black box in the process. You know, like we put a lot of stuff into a black box, and just forget about it. You know, like we put it away, and so we are endorsing the norms and values already dominant in that culture. So it's not very innovative, right? We are not really going as forward as we would like to. And we must understand that freedom is an educational challenge. Freedom is also learned. We must somehow teach freedom. And it's not and we know it's not easy, it's a challenge, of course. So what I'm proposing, and this is where I know it was a long introduction, but this is where my presentation comes. I'm talking about metapoiesis, which is such a mental process about taking a step back and recognizing what we are doing, the images we are generating and the images we are consuming as they carry significance already. And the software we are using, the tools we are using, they are transmitting a lot, they are communicating a lot of knowledge, a lot of positions of stuff. Actually, there's history to it as well. For example, if you watch Photoshop, you recognize shapes of tools that were used for photography 20 years ago, but most of the people using Photoshop right now have never used those tools. So it becomes more and more crypto-positivist. What I was talking about, like software is also very cryptic about it, and there's a process of black boxing to software where nobody really understands everything that's happening there. Maybe not even the people making them. It's especially true for very large software. You know, like these huge tools, like any Adobe tool, like game engines. Are so complex that no engineer in the company making this particular tool understands everything that the tool does or how everything works. There are some layers to it, very deep layers. For example, in Photoshop, there are layers so deep that they have to hire eventuals to fix some parts of the software, right? So what we need to do, and what I'm proposing here, is that we could use some ludic strategies for this creative emancipation, for this freedom of creativity. And very quickly, I go over from John Henry to Matrix and the 4 stages of industrialization and why art is so far away from science. We'll talk about a bit positivism. You know, Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer. And these guys, well, they say like, okay, all these disciplines are very different. Science is far away from art, and science and engineering add a lot of value to society. And actually, well, this is Comte's words. He said like, well, maybe art is not that important, right? Like, what is it for? Even when I see Maslow's pyramid, I sometimes feel uneasy because he puts games and pleasure in such a low level of importance, and I think to myself, maybe it's more important than Maslow thinks it was. But this illustration way of thinking was hand to hand to industrialization processes, and in the 4 stages of industrial revolution, we have the mechanization process. And well, I'll not go deep into the John Henry's story, but I'll be very quick. Like this, in the John Henry fable, this very strong worker does a match against a machine. He fights a machine into building train tracks, right? And eventually, sorry for the spoiler for those of you who haven't watched any of the animated shorts or film adaptations of the John Henry story, John Henry wins, but dies in the process. I mean, he wins the race against the machine, but dies in the process. And what this teaches us about the way of thought at the time is like, well, maybe we can win against the machine, but we can stop progress. We can win the race, but progress is unstoppable. And then here comes supervise and movements and times. That's Fordist, Taylor, all these processes. And also there's a representation of this, like Chaplin's Modern Times illustrates well the fears of that time and what types of movements implied at that time. It's actually very natural to be afraid of this kind of stuff. Automatization was also very scary since the actually since the late 70s, early 80s, it was kind of scary, the thing about automatization. Robocop comes from that time. We can talk about it. We'll talk about a bit more about Robocop later on. And there he comes, Industry 4.0 with cyber physical systems and all its might to dominate us under the power, the infinite power, the infinitely superior power of the machine. This is the fear of Matrix, right? We're talking about a relationship, a very rooted and maybe somehow truthful relationship of fear with these industrial revolution processes. But what I'm saying, maybe it's if software is taking command somehow, this is Lev Manovich's book, it's actually the title of the book, like if software takes command, maybe, yeah, we should be scared, right? For example, are you scared of artificial intelligence right now? In 2023? Well, a lot of people is. I'm a bit scared, not that scared, I guess. Like the more you know, the less scared you get somehow, and then you will start learning more and become scared again. But it's, yeah, it's with artificial intelligence, I think it's like that. What I mean is like we know about that fear right now, but we can answer that with rehumanization. Maybe it's not about just software tyrants. We can rehumanize this relationship and understand we are what's important there in the equation. Even if software becomes huge, and even if software surpasses by far the capabilities of a single human mind, that's where it is right now. I mean, not of all of humanity yet, but you can. I was talking to you about how these big, for example, game engines are so robust that no single person understands them fully because it's very complex. So even if they surpass the capacity of a single person, we can rehumanize the relationship with them because we understand it's about just the user, the creator. We are in charge. I'm not talking about, it's about all the links on the value network. It's about what entity is truly in control. And it's not really, I don't think it's really about antagonization, but really about emancipation from software tools, being free against these software tools, facing these software tools. But yes, software is complex and even scary, as I was thinking, right? Like, not so easy. Let's get back to people themselves, not the things themselves. We should think of the people first. And we must understand that reading is not the same as writing, and playing games is not the same thing as playing them. Learning and helping to learn, teaching and investigation play a huge role in this part, because people could really and very easily, and being lazy about it, and just go with the flow and say, like, okay, now I have my pipeline, I'll just repeat it ad nauseam, ad infinitum, and let's get on with this thing. Innovating in this software thing is not for me, but it's some sort of responsibility as researchers, as teachers, as universities, as powerhouses of knowledge to face that and to generate this. So we must teach students to understand rules and how to break them somehow, and maybe teach them to be killjoys in a good sense. I mean, go out of the game and break the game. The game this work-related software is proposing us, I mean, right? If you're doing the ludic strategy scenes and doing and looking at this relationship as if it was a game, which is not really a game, but it has a lot of similarities. So here becomes the poiesis thing, like we are creators of stuff, but what I'm talking about is not just creating stuff, but taking a step back, right? Dreyfus and Lawrence Kelly talk about this, not just creating stuff, taking a step back and recognize what we are doing and maybe why we are doing it, and then maybe take this back a step into the game and keep playing it. But we need to have this meta vision of what we are doing, why we're doing it, which images are proposing us which stuff, and what we do, how what we do affects others, especially working softwares, as games maybe. Could be anything. And here comes the third and almost last part, playing art, how these practices for metapoiesis can also enhance liberty, creativity, and innovation. And well, Johann Huizinga talks of us as early as 1938 about how games and play have cultural generation functions, right? So Bruno Munari, much later, this Italian guy who kind of was parent of the father, one of the fathers of art or design thinking, I mean, and design as a discipline. He mixes this thing with pedagogy, art, and design, and he comes with this concept of gameplay of art. You know, el juego del arte, el juego del arte in Spanish. I think it makes more sense in Latin languages than it does in English. But what he says is like art is like a game you play. The game of art is very different from other games because the game of art is about breaking the rules, constantly breaking the rules, right? It's not about playing by the book. So we must teach the play of art, the game of art. So by playing art, we enable the possibility of design. By exploring, by knowing the subject matter we are facing, we enable the possibility of later solving problems with this knowledge. We explore the map, and then we apply what we learned from art into design and start solving stuff. So maybe art thinking and this divergent thinking process is good for placing Industry 4.0. So, well, there's Maria Caso, this Spaniard professor that said art thinking and how art can transform education, and he says, yeah, let's do art thinking for everything. So this is not new. I said Bruno Munari, Maria Caso. There's the art thinking method, which I think gets a bit superficial, but somehow it works as a starting point. I would actually say there's no real method to art thinking because we're trying to break the rules here, but yes, it's a guideline. And we must understand that divergent creativity is as important to art and science, I mean, going elsewhere as convergent creativity and problem solving specifically is important for design engineering. This scheme by Ogawa paints the picture perfectly, I guess. You know, like first we do this art thinking and then we do this design thinking process. You know, that this is even better, right? We go in every direction and then design helps us in a particular problem. I put here divergent thinking stuff on the up part and convergent thinking. So yes, creativity is on itself a thinking phenomenon. Even if it is divergent or convergent, it is a thinking phenomenon. Both, we must understand both divergent and convergent creativity and characteristics are acting vector for anthropogenesis. I mean, yes, I know it's a complex word, but what I mean is that both types of creativity were important in developing us as humans from an evolutionary perspective even. And creativity then, and these both ways of thinking then, are essential for getting free of the directives that might oppress us from facing the machine, right? Like Robocop did when he faces the fourth directive in the movie. I hope you watched the movie. If you didn't, I urge you to watch it. And so, is there a method? This is the last part, I promise I'll be very quick. Is there a method to this? Well, in my personal opinion, not really, because it's more like a principle. Let's identify some rules, maybe maybe even do a synthesis of those rules, those simpler rules, but I was talking about against crypto positivism, so maybe not. And then break these rules we identify. As soon as we identify some rules on the process, let's understand maybe how to break them. But yes, okay, that might be a method. Wilhelm Flusser, which is a philosopher of the photography, talks about a concept called apparatus. And the apparatus is bigger than the machine itself. I mean, the machine is a series of objects interconnected for a purpose, right? The machine helps do stuff. But the apparatus is way larger because an apparatus changes society as a whole, or way of thinking, or even perceiving reality as a whole. And we can identify several apparatus as well. He being a photography philosopher, he says, well, photography is an apparatus clearly because it changed the way we perceive reality as a whole, for the whole humanity. But of course, writing is a technology that changed the shape of reality as well. Well, the automobile did the same thing, and planes, air travel did the same thing as well, and the internet, of course, and I think more than half of the room here were testimonial to that huge change in humanity. So what Wilhelm Flusser proposes is understanding the apparatus, but also breaking the apparatus in order to generate new meaning. It's kind of the same thing Munari is proposing, right? Like you get a rule and then break it. Art is about doing that, Munari says, you know? And that's how he teaches this art and design to kids. But I think it works with adults as well. And Wilhelm Flusser is proposing a very similar idea. Like, yeah, we understand the apparatus is super complex, it's huge, it affects all of, not only an individual, but the whole of society. But we must break how the apparatus work and use it differently in order to keep generating meaning. So he says, like, yeah, let's take blurry pictures, whatever. Let's take pictures that don't mean anything to you, but might mean something to someone else. Or do pictures that are very, very personal, and you get them, but everyone will get something different out of it. But try to play out of the rules for the apparatus for a bit and break it, right? Dreyfus and Dorrance-Kelly actually were the coiners of the term metapoiesis. They say that in the secular age, they're talking about writing, but it applies to all arts. They say that in this age, you should actually become some sort of a craftsman to know when to align with the mass and applaud with everyone, and when to take heel and say, no, this is not for me, right? Like you have to understand when to play the game and when to step out of the game in order to keep generating meaning. They say, like in the secular age, if you just produce meaning, you're not really doing new meaning. You're just repeating what's already there. And in a conclusion, a sort of non-conclusion, we should understand that thinking about this stuff is way behind of the actual stuff happening. But even so, we must think about this kind of stuff, especially if we are in the education field. So I like to close with these wonderful words, enhanced by the artist Erin Hansen, and she says, like, what if I fail? Oh, but Claudian, but why? What if you fly? And I think this reflects a lot of this metapoietic thinking, like, let's break it, let's go outside and do things differently and question our tools. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, great. I see some smoke. Any question? Okay.
Okay.
Is it?
Well, I have smoke in my head. But I was thinking about the master and your presentation and how well we have said that we cannot think what's going to happen in the future. Maybe in 5 years it's impossible. But thinking about what you have shared, do you think that the digital arts and the creative media as we know right now, and some things that we can project in the near future, we can use them to change the way we share as humans? Because right now we are thinking in the master in a way of how the media and the new media and the creative media is used now, and how thinking about this, how can we use it in the future? Well, in the future, the creative media and the new media isn't going to be this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially with artificial intelligence, it's a rough calculation, but I would say over 80% of our processes will be intervened by some kind of artificial intelligence within the next 2 years. Yes, that will obviously change a lot of what we're doing now, so it's completely unpredictable, you're right. But I think what we can do, it's rather than focusing on how software changes, focusing on what has been always there for creatives and artists. I mean, like, after all, we are trying to make people learn. And the key word there being people, right? Again, so we are helping them learn. And we could focus as well on what hasn't changed for the past, I would not even say decade, I would say millennia for artists. And I think a lot of that stuff will still be present in the future. And yes, I know, when we say technology, we have a tendency to focus a lot on computers, but let's understand that art and technology have been together for a while now, thousands of years really, because even pigments are a technology. A pencil is a technology, and actually quite a very recent one. Pencils are not that old, and not even the ball pen is that old, really. So the oil painting was a huge thing a few centuries ago. So we must understand that technology and art have always been related, and as artists, we always grab any new stuff invented and try to bring it to our field. As soon as computers were invented, people started playing games with them, and very few moments afterwards making art with them. In Mexico, for example, Felgueres, right? Like, he started working with computers almost right away to produce images, because that's what we do. As artists, for millennia, we observe new technological changes and see what we can do with them. But first, we must understand bits of that technology. So maybe enabling our students to have those bits of critical thinking and metacognition towards these changes will help them much better than focusing on teaching them how to use the specific tool, because the tool will change very soon. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
a lot of it remains for me the question about the relationships between humans with the technology and with the arts. I mean, it happens that right now the art is pushing, by example, the artificial intelligence towards the limit.
Yeah.
We have talked before the launch about how the artificial intelligence right now, we are using it to make those things that we could make if we have time without working, because the artificial intelligence is working for us. But right now that we are using in a lot of cases the artificial intelligence to make art.
Yes,
So this changes a lot.
it changes a lot, but there's a pattern in there. And that's part of the game I was talking about. Like there's a pattern there because I would say that art have always pushed computational science to the limit. We must not forget it was a few decades ago that making a 3D teapot on a computer was a huge step forward for computers. I mean, like a single teapot model was a huge thing a few decades ago. Like when was that teapot model made? I don't have exactly the my head, but it's
Like
very
the
basic.
perspective in Da Vinci.
Yes, but we are always as art, specifically not only entertainment, or I'm not talking only about movies. I'm talking about art in general. Have always pushed computational science to the limit. Because we can imagine, as artists, we can imagine things that the computer can't do yet, and we want the computer to do them. As soon as something starts to change shape very easily, we want it to adapt to the shape we want. I know you can change shape. I know you can bring me some curious new stuff. So I want more. I want different stuff. I want stuff you can't even make. That's why we ask as artists, that with this divergent nature. And yes, and so yes, I think we also might maybe there's not a very specific way, but at least awareness is, I would say, is quite a step forward with students. Awareness of that artists always keep pushing engineers, and it shouldn't be the other way around, especially if you're making art. If you're making something else, well, maybe it could be, but the ones holding the horses should be the artists, because we are working, if you're working in art and entertainment and with aesthetic values, you should really take command over engineering and science for the advancement of art. But those kind of divergent leadership will also be used for other kind of stuff, as we see now with it's becoming a bit obsolete very quickly, but the whole idea of the metaverse comes out of game technology. So it was pushed forward by an art form. Let's not get into that debate, but it was pushed forward by an art form, and then all these advances can be used for other stuff, right? So that's always been the case. But we must teach our students that mindset, I guess. That's a step forward. But they understand that they must be the rulers of this equation. Yes.
Someone else?
Thank you very much for
Thank you. It was very similar to us, but it was not the same.
It's a long discussion between us and with it. Must be continued.
Yes.
But no, our school in France, we were one of the first art school, to be equipped with digital software and so on. It was a kind of revolution because some of our colleagues, they became crazy. So they were opposed to the introduction of digital in the environment, because and sometimes for bad reason, because they talk about analog. The analog is best at digital. So digital is a disputation of of the reality. You have like a scale, and so it's bad. So we have very sad discussion, and sometimes we miss the essential. And I think that in your lecture you center on the archaeology of media. of media. You know,
Yeah.
archaeology of media,
So
archaeology. And I think that in art, there are no progress. It's not like in science, we could say that this telescope is better, the Hubble telescope is better than the old one, and so on. But in art, I think that the creative media, it's not just artificial intelligence or robotics or so on, but you talk about the pen can be added to another system with augmented reality, and painting is relevant, drawing is always relevant, like Stephanie said. So, no, one of the question for me is very important to try to ask what kind of reality we are facing now. And is art and science give us a better reality, or a reality that could be more adapted to our future, or the future of our society? And so perhaps one way is to dig perhaps your corpus and to find that yeah, some questions are always asked by a philosopher and so on, but some questions are really new.
Yeah.
And I think that new paradigms are now relevant and must be clarified, like delinearization of information, like perhaps yes, the fact that we can with databases access information with jump and not just with a scroll of data. The time change.
even alphabetical
yeah.
order was a very
Yeah.
huge thing a few decades ago. And
Yeah, and I think that your concept of poiesis or meta-poiesis is very important for me, very relevant, because when you analyze the process, artistic process, we see that the time and space of the production change with the technology. So now we have this kind of tool. So I said to my colleague, I said, you are a professor of iPhone, because this is
yeah, and no, well, actually, I'll go a step forward. We could say we are professors of screens, because all of the devices are disappearing behind the screen. Everything is just a screen now, and the device is so small or so thin that even a laptop is a screen and a keyboard, and you don't see anything else. So, but that's what I was going with crypto-positivism. Like we keep black boxing all this kind of stuff, and it's as you were saying, in comparison with analog tools, in which processes are much harder to hide. I mean, in an analog tool, when you learn something with an analog tool, the whole process, even the smell of the chemicals or the feel of the paintbrush on your hand are part of the process, and you understand that. And with software, it's very easy to let it go as a black box, and yeah, push this button and it does the magic, and I don't understand anything of what's happening behind. And I think that's part of the problem, that you're actually, yeah, that's why all students should understand a bit more about software. And I don't really say like they should be programmers or software architects, but they should understand how some of those things work. And maybe, just maybe, one of the strategies is actually keep using some analog tools, keeping them close to analog tools, because analog tools still show a lot of those processes as they happen very openly, very transparently, and software, in its nature of automating processes, hides a lot of those very specific things. But yeah, I totally agree. I agree with it. Yes. I don't know.
Someone else?
We have one other, I guess. Or that's it.
Well, that's it.
Or-
That's it.
Thank you.
Bonjour, Jean-Marie.
Maybe you don't know.
Yes, I want to pursue the discussion about the metapoiesis, the distance you try to have of mechanical edge, a digital edge, mechanical line. You read Wilhelm Flusser, and Wilhelm Flusser spoke about delinearization, and Wilhelm Flusser explained, I forgot the title of the book, but explained clearly that with the book, the invention of the book, we create a new time, because when you read the book, you must have time to read each line, and after the other line, the other line. And this is totally different than how the people read before. They read by association and not line after line.
Yes, of course.
And he explained after when in our society, we are now in the other possibility to lie, to read. We associate now elements which the society of digital.
Yeah, exactly.
And Manovich pursued this discussion and reflection and said with digital apparatus, we are now in the society with a database in one side, and the other side you have the mathematics who allows to associate each data to each data to each data to each data. And now with if we think that AI is the most development of the society, of the sciences society, which is can be different than Manovich have announced. After.
I don't quite understand the question. But
my question is AI modifying the paradigm, the new paradigm of digital society?
Yes, of course. But maybe not as abruptly as we fear, I guess, because let's see what happens. Because it is, of course, a paradigm shift, especially of how we perceive, for example, image generation and time as well. But perception of time has been changed for quite a while now, I would say, actually in an elaboration to that line of thought. Because, for example, movies, cinema gives us a different perspective of time. Usually cinema jumps in time, and the spectator must rebuild time on his mind, much like with reading. But in games, the user, the player, has agency of time, and you can, for example, on a single mission, you can take 5 minutes, or you can take 15 minutes, and you can do things on disorder, or you can do it again and again. So the user has agency of time. It's at that frame. So it's different. It's very different from reading or watching a movie, because now the agency of time is in another person. And I think that actually video games have changed a lot of what Flusser is describing there. Well, yeah, we know Manovich is an expert on software, but maybe not an expert on games so much. But when you look at games, you see that these are software devices that give us a lot of agency and a lot of how would you say, like instantaneous response to user inputs. So I think when you think of that relationship with software for people who's been a gamer for his or her life, the relationship with artificial intelligence might not be as different. So maybe there's the key point. I think video games might be the key transition paradigm there. Like this is the great ground, the middle ground, the liminal space between the previous paradigm and the new paradigm that's arising. I don't know if I answered or moved forward with it. I hope I answered well, something. I mean, like.
This is a discussion for the future too.
Yes,
This
of
is
course.
a debate we can have together because it's very
Yes.
important. And you have also this reflection about the science, which is not causal now,
Yes.
but respond to
We are all.
correlation.
Sorry?
Correlation.
Correlation, yes.
Not causal, no, but correlation. And in Wilder, 10 years ago, a scientist told the science is there. And it's very, I think with AI, we are in a correlation between a lot of data. And I think it's a new model. But we have open discussion with it for the future.
I look forward to it. With all of you, actually. Yeah. Fred as well, and all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacinto. We're just on time, actually. Come on. Come on, Eric. You speak so much better than.